I came back from Nepal to find my backyard turned into a graveyard by my overzealous HOA, only to learn they dug up my grandfather's hidden FBI files buried under my tool shed. When Agent Carter told me I legally owned intellectual property the FBI had been using for decades, I couldn't help but wonder how far Lisa Reynolds and her cronies would go when they realized they'd tangled with the wrong homeowner. My suitcase hit the porch with a thud as I fished for my keys. After a year studying with monks in Nepal, I was desperate to see my garden. The flight had been exhausting, my body ached, and all I wanted was to crash in my own bed. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of shovels slicing into dirt. I dashed around the house and stopped dead. 5 strangers in matching blue vests were digging holes across my yard. My roses were gone, my vegetable patch ruined, replaced by rows of small granite markers. "What are you doing?" I yelled, dropping my backpack. "Get off my property." The workers glanced up, bewildered, as a woman in a sharp pantsuit strode toward me, clipboard in hand. "Excuse me, but this is now Evergreen Rest Memorial Grounds," she said, nudging her stylish sunglasses up her nose. "You can't be here." Before I could argue, my neighbor Ellen rushed over, her silver hair bouncing. "Thank goodness you're back," she exclaimed. "I've been trying to reach you for months." The pantsuit woman frowned. "Ellen, you know this person?" Ellen grabbed my arm. "This is the owner. This is their house and land." The woman's face went blank, then turned crimson. "That's impossible. The HOA declared this property abandoned after 6 months of no contact." I pulled out my phone, showing her my travel docs. "I've been on sabbatical in Nepal. I paid my bills ahead and notified the post office." "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "HOA bylaws clearly state. Who are you?" I cut in. Ellen answered for her. "This is Lisa Reynolds. She took over as HOA president 3 months after you left." Lisa adjusted her jacket. "As I was saying, per bylaw 47B, properties deemed abandoned can be repurposed for community use. We voted unanimously." My head spun as I took in the wreckage of my yard. 12 years of gardening erased. The Japanese maple my mom planted, the stone herb spiral I'd built. All gone, replaced by these grave markers. "Are those headstones?" I asked, dread creeping in. Lisa looked smug. "Memorial markers. We've been selling plots to residents who want to honor loved ones or reserve spots. It's been quite profitable." "Profitable?" My hands shook. "You're selling my land?" "Community property now," Lisa corrected, glancing at her watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, we have the Henderson Memorial at 3. You need to leave." I stood firm. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, and I have the deed." Lisa waved to a security guard. "Mike, escort this person off." Ellen stepped between us. "Lisa, you can't do this. I told you months ago the owner was traveling." "Your input was noted, Ellen," Lisa said icily. The vote was unanimous. As Mike approached, looking uneasy, I spotted something odd behind where my shed once stood. Men in dark jackets were carefully digging, placing items in plastic bags. "What's happening over there?" I demanded. "Where's my shed?" Lisa's expression flickered. "Fear, maybe? That's a separate matter. We found irregularities during the excavation." Ellen whispered. "They found something under your shed. The FBI's been here for 3 days." "The FBI? Under my shed?" My grandfather's warning rang in my ears. Never move the shed. Never dig there. What's buried stays buried. I'd always thought he was exaggerating. Lisa was on her phone now, casting nervous glances my way. "Yes, the owner's back. Yes, unexpected. No, they don't seem to know about it." One of the men in dark jackets approached. I saw FBI on his sleeve. "MS. Reynolds, we need to speak with the property owner," he said firmly. Lisa pointed at me, her hand trembling. "Apparently, this is them." The agent turned to me, his face unreadable behind sunglasses. "I'm Special Agent Carter. We need to talk about what we found under your property." "I've been gone a year," I said. "I don't know what's happening." "Still," he replied, "what we uncovered dates to the 1940s. Did you know your grandfather worked for the government?" "Of course," I said cautiously. Grandpa loved his vague government job stories. He'd left me the house with strict yard rules I'd ignored. He mentioned it. Agent Carter nodded toward his team. "We found a sealed box with classified documents from back then, still technically government property." Lisa clutched her clipboard like a shield. "This justifies our claim. There are national security issues here. Carter shot her a look that silenced her. Ma'am, this is a federal matter now. The HOA has no say. As Lisa sputtered, Ellen squeezed my arm. They found something else before the FBI arrived, she whispered. Lisa told everyone to keep quiet. A chill hit me as Carter handed me his card. We'll need you to come in tomorrow for questioning. Don't discuss this with anyone. As he left, Lisa's phone rang. Her face paled. What do you mean, no permits for the memorial garden? We're the HOA, we don't need. She stopped, then glared at me. This isn't over, she hissed, storming off toward confused memorial attendees. Ellen helped me grab my bags. Stay with me tonight. Your utilities might be off, and I don't trust Lisa. As we walked to her place, I glanced back at my ruined yard, the FBI agents digging where my shed once stood, Lisa on her phone. Ellen, I asked quietly, what did they find before the FBI? She looked around nervously. A metal box with your grandfather's name on it, photos of him with J. Edgar Hoover, and papers about Project Vision. Lisa opened it before realizing what it was. My grandfather with the FBI's founder? Project Vision? None of it made sense. There's more, Ellen added as we reached her door. A 1947 deed, it wasn't just for the house. It gave your family rights to something the government still uses. Sunlight poured into Ellen's guest room as I lay awake, reeling from last night's revelations about Grandpa, the FBI, and Project Vision. A knock startled me. Ellen poked her head in with coffee and toast. You've got a visitor. Agent Carter's in the living room. I dressed fast and found him studying Ellen's family photos. Sorry to come so early, he said, turning. But overnight developments sped things up. What developments? I asked, taking the coffee Ellen offered. The documents trace back to the start of modern FBI forensics, he explained. Your grandfather didn't just work there. He founded our first forensics unit. I nearly choked. Grandpa never said that. Just that he had a government job. Carter nodded. Many early agents kept it secret. But that's not why I'm here. He set a folder on the table. We found his will in the buried items. It's unusual. My hands shook as I read the yellowed, watermarked page. To my descendants, I leave my property, possessions, and ownership of all methods, processes, and frameworks in Project Vision. The government has a perpetual license to use them, contingent on acknowledgement and compensation. What does this mean? I asked, dazed. It means, Carter said carefully, your family owns the intellectual property rights to forensic methods the FBI's used for over 70 years. Ellen gasped. I couldn't speak. Payments stopped in the 70s when your family couldn't be found after his death, Carter added. So the FBI owes me money? Potentially a lot, he confirmed. But that complicates your HOA situation. Through the window, I saw Lisa Reynolds and 3 suited men heading toward Ellen's house. That's the HOA lawyer and a developer, Carter noted, checking his watch. Right on time. The doorbell rang. Ellen hesitated, but I nodded for her to open it. Lisa burst in, followed by the suits. There you are, she said, spotting me. You're requested at an emergency HOA meeting this afternoon. We're voting on the final status of your former property. Former? I challenged. I still have the deed. A suit stepped forward. Roger Klein, HOA attorney. Per bylaw 47B, your property was legally transferred to the community after 6 months of abandonment. I didn't abandon it, I countered. I was on sabbatical and paid everything ahead. Notification was posted on your door and in local papers, Klein said smoothly. No response, so it proceeded legally. Lisa smirked. The memorial garden stays. Carter cleared his throat. Actually, there's a federal interest here that overrides HOA bylaws. Lisa's smirk faded. This is a local matter. Not anymore, Carter replied, flashing his badge. The items found tie to federal operations and national security. Another suit looked alarmed. What items? The HOA wasn't told. Exactly, I cut in. You dug without proper surveys or permits, disturbing historical artifacts. Lisa's face reddened. We followed all procedures, including permits for a commercial cemetery. Commercial? I asked innocently. The third suit paled. You said this was a community memorial, not a business. Lisa glared at him. It's a community service with donations for upkeep. Interesting, Carter mused. Because we have records of $200,000 in plot sales in 3 months. Klein adjusted his tie. I should review those transactions. Do that, I said. Meanwhile, I've been reviewing too. I showed emails from neighbors, sent while I was away, proving Lisa ignored their info about my travels. Ellen stepped up. I told the board they were in Nepal. I showed them the goodbye email. Lisa's cool cracked. The board voted. It's done. Under false pretenses, I replied. You had info to push your garden through. The developer glanced between us. Is this true? Of course not, Lisa snapped. A misunderstanding we'll fix at the meeting. About that, Carter said, federal agents will attend to discuss the classified materials and the historical site you disturbed. Lisa's phone buzzed. Her face went white. Problem? I asked. Nothing, she said too fast, but I glimpsed the text. We know about the money. Meeting canceled. The developer frowned at his phone. All HOA accounts are frozen pending investigation. Lisa's eyes darted like a trapped animal. Impossible. On whose authority? Mine, said a new voice. An older woman in a black suit entered, flanked by agents. Carter straightened. Director Hayes, we didn't expect you. She nodded to him, then fixed on me. When I heard Samuel Carter's grandchild was found, I had to come. Your grandfather saved my father's career with his forensics work. She turned to Lisa, now ghostly pale. As for the accounts, that's standard when federal funds are embezzled. Federal funds? Lisa stammered. We didn't. The moment you sold plots on this land, Hayes said coolly, you misused federally protected assets worth millions. Silence fell as Lisa sank into a chair, her empire collapsing. What now? I asked quietly. Hayes handed me a thick folder. That's up to you. Here's everything on your grandfather's work, the property's history, and your options. Inside, a key was taped with a note in Grandpa's handwriting, for the hidden room under the rose garden. Some secrets stay buried, some must be revealed. Choose wisely. Frost glittered on the memorial plaque as I wiped it clean. 6 months had passed since that chaotic HOA meeting, and Evergreen Rest had changed beyond recognition. Need help? Agent Carter asked, appearing with coffee. He handed me one, surveying the new memorial garden we'd built together. It's perfect as is, I replied. Unlike Lisa's illegal graveyard, this sat on proper community land, its markers honoring loved ones legally and respectfully. Heard from the Reynoldses? Carter asked, sipping his drink. Not since their tax audit, I said. Ellen says they sold their house and moved to Florida. Funny how some flee consequences. We strolled toward where my shed once stood, now a small museum, foundations of forensics, showcasing Grandpa's legacy. That licensing deal you struck was smart, Carter said. The FBI keeps his methods, and you ensure his work helps people. The money's just a bonus, I added. Kids raced past toward the museum, their teacher trailing behind. I smiled, recalling Lisa's gripes about noisy children. President, Ellen called from my porch, waving. As my HOA vice president, she often stopped by with updates and cookies. Today, she carried papers too. More complaints? I asked, climbing the steps. The opposite, she said, spreading out thank you notes. Mrs. Larson loves her grandson's memorial. The Parkers appreciate the playground we funded with the licensing cash. Mr. Ortiz says the community garden gave him purpose in retirement. I flipped through, amazed at the transformation. Neighbors once swayed by Lisa now united for real progress. There's more, Ellen said, pulling out a newspaper. Your story went national. 3 other neighborhoods with HOA issues want advice. Carter whistled. Looks like a new calling. That night, at a potluck in the community center, neighbors mingled like friends. When I spoke, the room hushed. 6 months ago, I came home to strangers digging graves in my yard. I began. Nervous laughter broke out. I was furious, but now I see something unexpected. We're a real community. I raised my glass toward the memorial garden's twinkling lights. Good can grow from the worst moments. My grandfather sought truth, and somehow, we found ours. Later, as folks left, Carter lingered. We found something big in those documents yesterday, he said quietly. My heart skipped. What kind? The kind that might explain why the government cared so much about this land, he replied. It suggests your grandfather hid more than papers. I recalled Grandpa's will, protect the land. What lies beneath is only the beginning. There's more, I whispered. His phone buzzed. He frowned at it. We'll talk tomorrow. Seems the past is stirring beyond evergreen rest. As he left, I gazed at my restored property, wondering what secrets it still held. One thing was certain, I'd never skip security cameras on a long trip again.